Philippine music. I want to think then about how many others, especially two others, then will work with this notion of tradition. Instead of working in tradition, like Danny is doing, they're working against it. I want to give you an example of Eleanor Academia. She's based in Los Angeles. Eleanor is a fantastic keyboard player, vocalist and founder of her own record label called Black Swan Records. Academia has had a #1 single on the Billboard charts in both the United States and in Germany. She's played with leading rock, jazz, and pop musicians, including Maurice White, Alan Kay from Earth, Wind & Fire, Steve Smith from Journey, Carmine Appice from Rod Stewart, John Crisp from Danzig, J.D. Lee from Ozzy Osbourne, Matthew Greg Bissonette from David Lee Roth. He's still around. Isn't that weird? Isn't that funny? Ricky Rocket from Poison. Remember Poison? Some of you know. Doug Bossy from Joe Satriani, and Steve Gadd, who worked with Paul Simon. Eleanor is an example of what it means to work against the tradition, but also squarely within traditions of art and culture making that are not satisfied with well-worn conventions. In other words, there is a tradition of resisting traditions. And I want you to pay attention to how Eleanor plays this music. So then these four overlapping themes that emerge. What is it that happens when Philippine American performing artists perform in the United States? Again, we can think about this other question I want to deal with, but at least the ones that we've talked about today, when Philippine Americans perform in the United States, what are some overlapping themes that emerge out of that work, out of that aspect of cultural production that they're bringing to bear? And what I'm finding, and maybe you could also bring to bear your own themes that you see emerging as well. But I see at the very least four. First then is paying tribute to one's ancestors. Again, thinking about where then do ancestors emerge? What's the relationship between the past and the present for Filipino Americans? What is the Filipino American past for Filipino Americans? The second then concerns this reinterpretation of the past and recasting of cultural productions, recasting of cultural forms in this new present, this new place, whether it is California or Hawaii or New York. What does it mean then also to be on time? What does it mean to pay attention to the moment? Pay attention to the existing cultural conventions of their moment, whether it be jazz, hip-hop, salsa, funk, avant-garde dance, and what. And the last theme concerns then working with this notion of traditions. Many of us think that the tradition is solely a conservative tradition. And then we have to kind of, I think, provide greater nuance to what that word means. There are traditions that all they aim to do is to replay the past. But then there are other traditions that are just as active in helping to destroy the past as much as rework it. In other words, there are progressive traditions. There are traditions that call for a reawakening, a changing of several guards. So in that sense, you can think about how Philippine Americans both work inside and then also against traditions. Now, as I say, there also is another area of study for those of us that are students of this aspect of cultural studies, which is how do these choices resonate? How do these choices by Filipino Americans, how do they resonate with those by other Filipino artists overseas? For example, those in the Americas or in Europe, Africa, other parts of Asia. How are those choices different from their particular landscape? Thank you, that's all I have. Any questions? Comments? No questions or comments? Yes?
If you compare these film artists with the artists here in the Philippines, do you think that these film artists actually give more importance to the Filipino tradition, unlike the Filipino artists today who look up to Western culture as more of their influence than our own tradition?
Well, yeah, there's an argument that the further you leave the source of the culture, that it becomes that much more important. And there's an argument to be made that Filipino American artists are expressing that distance, that diasporic distance from the source to the edge. And then at its edge, at the edge of the world, at the forward edge of globalization, you find Filipino communities looking into their neighborhoods and wondering, well, what is it that's important about us? What is it that is important about living in Montreal or in San Jose, California, or Montebello, or in Houston, Texas? What does it mean for me to eat these foods, speak these languages, refer to each other, and especially if you have children? I'm talking about Filipinos that are overseas that have children with them. What are the lessons that you want to teach those children? Are they going to speak the language? Or are they going to take the name? Are they going to combine the names? So in many ways, the further you go, that's one argument to be made, is that the further you leave the so-called origin of the culture, that it becomes that much more important. There's that sense, there's a diasporic gravity that attaches. And I think for many of these artists, the ones that I dealt with here, they're very much interested in expressing that. I think so. Now, I think also in every metropolitan culture, you'll find that Western music and pop music is undeniable as a force. Whether it's hip-hop in Rome, or whether it's ska and punk here in Manila, there are this so-called notion of paying more attention to foreigners' cultural forms rather than your own. Well, that's something that is a constant conversation that takes place within those home cultures. And in many ways, they can be productive. In many ways, they can be productive in terms of thinking about what's the Western import, this Western gaze of cultural production here in the Philippines. And there have been artists here, haven't there, that have attempted to respond, either by re-indigenizing or thinking about their bands, thinking about Joy Ayala with Bumad. It's kind of reinterpreting the sense of the ethnic into the present. And there are many others, before and since, that have thought about what that means to challenge that notion of the simple reflection of Western culture. Beyond getting to beyond that aspect of reflecting the culture, there's this other aspect of actually creating something that's new. And that's something that's powerful. Now, you can do that. You can do that in a pop song. Right? And that's what was revolutionary about the idea of OPM, Pinoy rock. The idea that it was going to mean something specific and unique to this place. We're not just going to play a bunch of Led Zeppelin covers. Right? We're actually going to sing about the places that we come from, the people that we know. And we're going to do it in the languages that are comfortable to us.